Rui Miranda, very nice to have you today on the show. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Martin. Nice to be here with you.
I don't know why I call it a show. It just sounds more more established. For the benefit of the audience, it would be great if you wouldn't mind giving a bit of an introduction on yourself, your background. You've had some very interesting work experiences, and I think it would be beneficial to hear.
Sure. As you can imagine, I have many years of experience. Sometimes you forget how many. I start with consulting in technology consulting for 8 years or something around that. I did MBA, and that's when I start after that with my value selling career. I mean, it's something you start without really realizing actually we're getting. We in Oracle, this was not a thing like a practice. I mean, I'm sure there were no webcasts or anything about value selling by then. I always tell the story when my first manager there tells you, goes to a meeting, internal meeting, he arrives a bit late, he's sits in the back and just is a guy saying, oh, there is a guy arriving, he's going to talk about business case, don't pay too much attention. Most people would look at this, right? You buy tech is cool, you need to explain it very well, and they'll end up buying. I stayed several years, many years in Oracle. I mean, we grow, become a big practice, a very global team. Become actually alumni going all over of that Oracle team. I mean, and many of us feel very proud because it's always very interesting when things you discuss then that were just initially become just normal to discuss, like maturity, adoption, and whatever. I moved a few other roles there around go-to-market strategy and business development. Also, then I joined a fintech, leading and setting up the value engineering, value selling practice. Very interesting because many business units, products, was going through a big transformation. Again, I mean, it was challenging, was very traditional in some of because they coming from acquisitions. I mean, again, you need to create a lot of momentum to make it. And then I moved to where I am today at Fidseye is a fintech. So we serve global banks for them to handle and to fight fraud and money laundering. That's what we do. We have some of the global brands in financial service like HSBC, Lloyds. It's a global company growing. So the momentum where is many things. Today, AI changed the world. In this case, this company started 10 years ago. So that's when they start fighting it. Have a role both on value engineering, on the customer success, so both pre and post sales, and managing the customer success management, all the enablement for the revenue side. A lot has gone through.
Yeah, and you started the kind of your history with business value selling at Oracle. And I'm just curious, how does it differ the way what is done today versus the origins? Has it changed? Has it evolved considerably, or are the basic tenets the same?
There are two parts of it. So one part changed heavily. Before is like every time you start something new, I have to think with the caliber, the drive you need to have the people is the right people because you are starting on new. In bigger companies, the nice thing, you are always a bit more luxury of time, of testing, right? In a small company, if you test something, you hire someone for 6 months, you don't see the results, the pressure piles in. In larger companies, they know steering in a different direction always, you cannot expect everything to change in 3 months. You'd expect people who are almost starting from scratch. Oh, I need a new model for this. I need a new framework for that. I need really experienced people because you were starting with zero. We have never done in this case or in this new product, or now we're moving to SaaS. So everything was starting. So that was different from today. The people building their best experience. Sellers had experienced value selling very often. Not necessarily everybody, but like everything. If you have a core number of people did it, so they'll sell and explain others in your behalf. Easier to get there. And I think now with the ubiquitous of machine learning AI, things are changing fast also.
We encounter this a lot where more and more companies that we speak to are more and more aware and understand what value selling is. There's kind of a general market acceptance of the need to do it as opposed to, this is interesting methodology. It's not really a methodology anymore. It just is sales, right?
Yes, it is and is not. Look, I compare a bit like when customers say is customer centric. So every company say they are customer centric, right? It's a thing. Nobody's going to say, no, we are not really customer centric. But when you work, you feel some customers are really customer centric. Others go half the way. Yeah, the customer is important, but it's all internal barriers, challenge. Maybe they are not. For me, value selling is not too different. I've never seen someone say, no, I don't like to sell on value. When you get to the next level, it becomes a bit different, right? And that's what you find the difference is we embrace it as a team, we embrace it as a sales motion, we embrace as a mindset, and there you find levels of differentiation.
And how when you join a new organization that maybe isn't as sophisticated in value selling, how do you introduce it in a way that doesn't overwhelm a sales team? There's MedPick, there's all these with built-in frameworks. How do you make it so it is easily adoptable?
Yeah, what I've seen that works, you start by and you explain, you say we do business case, this, but then you start to assets that everybody can digest. Assets could be a value framework that explains, look, this is a visual way where we generate value to your customer. Try to use it in your discovery. Are you about efficiency? Is about risk? Is about launching new products, go to market? So you can launch that is easily adoptable because I can understand. Let me see how my customer is doing. You start also assets that link capabilities with value. Yeah, so you go half the way. I learned over the years that putting a full business case, something that for someone has been doing it or has done or feels very comfortable with numbers, nothing bad about putting ROI, net present value. Other people feel very uncomfortable. They don't know how to explain. They feel they'll stumble every time they get a question. But if you want them to say, look, if they are able to use every single piece of customer data in context for every single transaction, instead of just putting basic rules, this is going to reduce the number of transactions they block and the customer service costs. Yeah, I can say that. So you translate that in a way that people can feel comfortable. So you start with some of these assets.
And if they were to ask you, what's the difference between a business case and the ROI? How would you define the difference?
I'll tell you different. But both, one thing I struggle a little bit, saying that value selling is the same as putting a business case. But basically what it means is we go with a business case or the ROI number. The biggest difference, ROI is a number, so everybody will say, let me see more. A business case is still basically is a formula, is something you put and you end up with numbers. You can start with that, caught people attention, or you close with that, so people say, yeah, I can understand. But what the foundations, how you build each one of the benefits, I usually say is if nobody in the customer is able to explain it when they are asked, it's not working. And that, for me, that's the biggest difference is at the end, you are building an argumentation that someone needs to sell, not you. You are doing the easy part because you feel very comfortable, you know the product very well. It's not your money. No, it's all these things. It's relatively comfortable. We have been doing it for years. The guy on the other side going to explain is going to face challenge.
Exactly. And there's an enablement side. You need to help your buyer buy in a way
Correct.
That's educated. It's interesting because my company, we're an intelligent business case platform. So we live and breathe this stuff all the time. One of the main insights that we've really kind of honed in on is the business case is the only sales tool that's actually a buy side tool because it's actually what the buyer uses to make their decision. As a sales rep or a value seller, your goal is to help craft that business case to make it easy so your champion can formulate that.
It's interesting you say, for example, where we are now, we create an asset we call the one slider CFO for the CFO. So it is to help the sales guy visualize exactly that. We say, imagine this slide. You're going to put it. This is the slide your champion is going to use to sit down with the CFO because the CFO will just have 10 minutes to say, yes, I'm not sure, too bad. And this exactly, he's going to use it to sell his project to someone who understands zero about fraud. And that's often what our buyers are facing. The higher you go, the less the different stakeholders understand the details.
That's true.
You need a story that everybody can embrace somehow. And that story is what you're trying to build to your sponsor.
And oftentimes what we find is that it may be the very first time that your champion or sponsor has ever bought this category. So it's not like they are full of insight. They may do some research, but they need the help to enable them to answer the 3 whys, right?
Yes, and that's a good point. With many buyers is the first time, and second, it's very complex to buy today. It's really sometimes when we are in the other side, you feel this guy wants it, why is he taking a long time? If you get, and I've also been involved on the other side, it's difficult. You get doubts, you don't know enough, someone knows more than you and is pushing you in a different direction. So anything that makes the message simple and sharp, will help you. That's what at the end, that's what we're trying to do. It's not so much, I think many years ago, maybe we're actually informing the customer, lots of things he did not know. Actually, today is more, there is an overwhelm of information. I mean, ChatGPT, I could go and spend 2 hours and know as anything I want to know about fraud, competitors. So if I'm a buyer, I'll know a lot in 2 hours. So it's not so much about, I'm going to tell you so many things you don't know because I'm an expert. It's really more, I'm going to make a lot of clarity to your decision.
In a scenario where more and more of your competitors, irrespective of the company where you're working today, are also getting better and better at value selling, how do you stand out? How do you make it so that you can differentiate and be the one who builds that business case that is used by your buyer?
Look, one part is not just, as you said, today, I mean, and you go to a website of any vendor, they'll put some numbers, my customers get a ROI, or they save this much, 30% productivity improvement. So everybody nowadays does that, right? You feel cultures given, everybody puts some that in the site. So that's not a differentiator, just putting that. So one part is what we're discussing is the iterative process. If you assume this is you go and you do it, I'm very good because my business case is so well written, it's not about, it's the iteration. Is the other person buying the story? Is he buying? Did he understand? Exactly. So that's one thing you differentiate. The other one is, I go back to my example, are you customer centric or not? Is it just you that do value selling, you the guy who puts a business case together, or is the solution consultant doing value selling when he demos? And it's never going to be perfect. We can always improve. But if you feel when we do a demo, the demo is not just to show capabilities, it's to prove value. It means that when our champion is going to ask around, they did this. Do you really believe we're going to improve productivity by 30%? 100%, because I mean, today we use 25 screens. They have shown us how we can easily have one screen and we get contextual information in real time. Yeah, no doubts. Because that's how they will do it, right? They'll go around, ask questions. Do you feel comfortable to sign on? Would you put your name in there? 25%. And that's what we need. Make it the sales cycle. What we do where I am, and most of the solutions I go to market with are relatively complex sales cycle. Complex in the sense they take a long time, many meetings, demos, different stakeholders. So you have multiple iterations. See, sometimes it's very easy to talk a business case. But then, so it's like two companies. There is a company who puts a business case together. There is a company who talks about bits and bytes.
Yeah.
And that's a differentiator if you can avoid to be that company.
And I guess at the end of the day, it's like dancing. You can only have one dance partner at a time. A champion is not going to build with 3 different vendors, be collaborating on building 3 different business cases. So if you're able to engage your champion to collaborate with you on building that business case, and you're pretty certain that they're not doing the same with the others. Is that a fair assumption?
It is, but I think even starts earlier than that is if you can engage your buyer, so the people from the other side. Actually, Gartner is an interesting framework. You look and you see how people buy. It's very complex, and say at the end they put a business case together to get approval. But what we know is if we just put a business case at the end, it's too late.
Yeah,
I mean, you are not answering. You are helping someone to put a little bit of a story. If the story is already very good, great. If the story is bad, it's not going to work. So what makes the difference? You already start since the beginning about, so tell me about it. Look, our competitors have a much better customer experience, but we cannot afford without taking too much risk to provide the same. Okay, I get you. Let's work. So I'm going to show you. So then you are building a story. The guy feels these guys are really understanding me. They are going to solve my problem. Now they are going to spend time. Then you build the storyline. It's a story. Something I learned when I moved from consulting to Oracle. Consulting is about people. I thought Oracle is going to be about tech. And then at the end, people buy from people. Still, how you engage and get the times, they will like to spend more time with us.
And where we talked a lot about value selling and the process, the pre-sale side. How do you see it evolving into the post-sale, into value realization?
Yeah, so that's part of what I also cover nowadays. That's very different. Sometimes I remember in the early days when they start to be discussed. So we need to look to the business case we put in initially and then continuously go back to it. Actually, the reality is the buyer does not want to go back to it because usually they are very smart people. Otherwise, they would not be where they are. Yeah. That business case was to win the decision. That's how they look at it very often. They don't want to go. If the project is delayed, they don't want to look. So, but what they still want to look is to objectives. And so valorization is more, you could say, of course, it starts from those initial assessment and objectives. I want to be able to launch a product in 2 months, not in 10 months. And that's where you see then if someone needs then to prove numbers, you'll put numbers and ROI and total impact to see it still justifies the value. But to what we put a very difference in the motions is you are looking to key targets and then tracking those targets, because those targets are the proxy for value.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you see a lot of, I guess, in your organization, does CS do the value realization or tracking?
Yes, we do. I mean, all we have for every customer, we do it. When we start, was the biggest reason or a key reason where we started. It was not so much so we need a business case. Was we realized we had a mismatch between the buyer ambitions and then the execution level.
Totally.
Happens in many companies, right? Someone buys here, they give this to a team to execute or delivery, and those teams usually are way more conservative than the buyer.
Yeah.
Because they see risks, they see problems. I'm not sure. Let's go slow. That's not really a priority. We want to add this in scope. So we realized that when you talk about retention and growth, that was a big mismatch. We want to elevate continuously the game to stay there. Of course, we stay. Execution is still key, does not change, but we want to avoid the mismatch. And that's where we had the governance that for every account, we need value realization, and our definition of value realization plan is if the buyer, the budget owner looks at it, he relates to it. In the beginning was more about, we need to do an upgrade. That was the definition. It was more actions.
Yeah, tasks. Transactional. Yeah.
Transactional.
Yeah, fair enough. I do need to ask you two relatively uncomfortable questions as we come to the end of this chat. First one is, who is the best BVC you've ever worked with?
As I said, I have been many years doing this. Look, I always say, to be in value selling, you need to have the courage to put numbers. I also the same. I think probably one of the best I've seen is Vijay Ramaswamy. We work together at Oracle. I find he always takes the human side of the buyer, understanding what's going on the other side beyond the numbers. So
I know him very well. Lovely guy, super sharp.
Yeah, clearly,
he'll be delighted and flattered. And thank you for that. And on the sales rep or value seller, who's the best you've ever worked with?
Okay, so there are lots. I'm going to give you two names, actually. So one is based in Dubai, called Rui Miranda, worked in Oracle many years, now in IFS. Is the person I've seen that sets up the ambition very high, and then he understands that the value angle helps him to convince others very well. I'm going to be the one putting the business case and is going to orchestrate the team, but he will put the value lead person in front of the key people, make the case, help me make it. So that guy was a master on that.
Great skill. Rui, thank you so much for today. I found it very, very insightful. Really appreciate it.
Martin, great to talk with you. Have a nice day. Cheers. Take care.